brew pub, and he had like a brew kit. It was like that big, you know. They could do like I don't know how many gallons. It was this very small amount when they started out, and now they're this big
Brewery. Yep. Here,
brewery. Like they're not
hitting.
they're not even a micro brewery. They're like
We're starting.
good. Yeah.
And we're here. It's Saturday, and we're talking Minnesota Vikings versus the Seattle Seahawks. Welcome to Good Morning Gallahorns, two old bloggers, where myself, Dave, and
The older one.
the older one, yes, and my good friend up north, Darren Campbell, are here to talk some Vikings football. How are you doing, Darren?
Pretty good, Dave. Had a good workout this morning. Little run, lifted a few weights. It probably reminds you of your old high school football days.
Oh yeah, and military
Uh,
days did that too.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was never in the military, so I don't have any context there. But yeah, so feeling good. Lots of energy, ready to get going on the show. Talk Vikings, Seahawks.
My favorite weightlifting right now is 12 ounces at a time.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Nope, and it keeps getting lighter. Hey there, Raymond. How you doing? And also hello to Mary Fisk, who's been here since we kicked this thing off. And Viking Jerome, welcome to your
Woo!
Saturday afternoon as we get ready to talk Vikings football. All right, what's
Wouldn't
first
be
on
a.
your list?
I don't remember.
I've got it here somewhere. Um,
Usually, usually you throw it up there, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what we were going to talk about. I
all
got it.
right, let's me switch scenes real quick. All right, playing with a new scene today to bring it up. Your first topic was boom, 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 boom. Let me get there. This guy, Chris Carlson, running back, for the Seattle Seahawks.
I bring him up not because he's gone insane lately when he's played the Vikings, but I do feel that with the Vikings' run defense was a little better last week than it was against the Bungles
Mm-hmm.
when they let Joe Mixon run all over us. But it still wasn't fantastic. I felt that Chase Edmonds and James Conner, uh, considering they're not the most well known and the best backs in the NFL, that we made it a little bit too easy. We gave them a little bit too easy 5 and 6 yard runs too often in that game, setting things up, even making it even easier for Kyler Murray. As you might remember, the
Mm-hmm.
Vikings defense gave up 471 yards, I believe, total yards against the Cardinals last weekend. We all of us know that that's not very good.
No.
But Carson is he's a not a well known guy, seventh round draft pick out of Oklahoma State, I believe. But he's a hard runner. He's a guy who doesn't go down at first contact. And he's last year he rushed for about over 90 yards against us. And the Seahawks, the last two times that they've faced the Vikings, have really run the ball very well. I believe for over 200 yards total in both games. Carson didn't get over 100 yards in either of those, but he's the starter. Rashad Penny is not playing again today. On Sunday, he hasn't played all season for them. So Carson is the main guy, and if you let Russell Wilson and the Seahawks offense get consistent good yardage on their running game, that just makes them even harder to stop, because the passing game is uh, really where they've been letting Russell Wilson has taken over this team. Back in the day when you had the Legion of Boom
Mm-hmm.
and Wilson was a bit younger, and you had Marshawn Lynch, Pete Carroll, basically like to run the ball a lot more and than pass it. And Wilson was still very effective, but they were more of a running team than a passing team. The past 2 seasons they become, as their running game is, Lynch is gone, Carson has taken over, but it's become Russell Wilson's team, and the passing game has been the focal point. But Carson is an effective guy, and the Vikings have had trouble tackling. And the guy who runs hard, doesn't get knocked down on first contact, really need the Vikings to put a focus and stop Carson and not let him get those 5 or 6 yard gains that we've been giving up the past 2 games. Keep Wilson in 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, and see what happens from there.
Well, you see, PFF likes him. He's got decent scores.
He's a good solid back.
How many yards should the Vikings target to keep him down to? You know he's going to get some
Yeah.
yards. The question is how many.
Oh yes, yeah. I think he'll get the bulk of the rushing attempts. They do have Travis Homer, who's kind of their change of pace guy, but he does more catching out of the backfield than running for the Seahawks. Carson, I'd like to see them keep him around 60, 70, maybe in the high 50s. I just don't know if that's possible. The Vikings will be playing at home. Maybe that. I don't know if that makes much of a difference than playing the Seahawks on the road. But can't really, in most games, I really feel like it really kills me seeing those. Uh, at the line of scrimmage, it looks like the Vikings have them. There doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem to be a whole lot of daylight. And then somehow the running backs we've been facing for the past 12, 14 months, they just pop through that, break a couple of tackles, and the next thing you know, they got a 6 or 7 gain when you really don't think they should have
Right,
gotten
when they
any
should have been
more than
stopped within
2.
2 yards, if not
Yeah.
behind the line of scrimmage. Yep.
And we have made, Michael Pierce is back. Dalvin Tomlinson was signed. We've got Kendricks playing all the time now. Nick Vigil's playing very well, although maybe he's not as good a run defender as a pass defender. That's yet to remain to be seen. We got Daniil Hunter's back.
Mm-hmm.
We've got guys back. We should be better stopping the run than we have been the past 2 games. And I feel that it's going to be tough enough to stop Wilson anyway. but it's going to be very tough if we don't stop Carson as well and stop him from getting going and getting Wilson in even more favorable down and distance situations than he needs to be in.
Well, hopefully being at home helps with that. Speaking of Russell Wilson, that was your next topic on your list. And PFF likes Russell Wilson. Scoring in any times you score in the 80s, you are damn good.
Yes, PFF should like Wilson because he's a great quarterback, and this will be the 19th meeting for the Seahawks and the Vikings, including the one playoff game, and we're now 5-13 overall against the Seahawks. It was a pretty even Steven matchup between the two until Wilson came along, and as you know, we've never beaten the Seahawks since Wilson became their starting quarterback in
Yeah, he's
2000.
7-0, I think it
7
is.
and 0, 7 and 0 against us. In that during his career, like 14 TDs thrown, passing TDs thrown, 4 interceptions, quarterback rating. He's the focal point. He's the guy that makes things go for this team. He does get sacked a lot. He probably causes some of those sacks because he moves around. He tries to extend plays. Maybe doesn't throw the ball away, and there's ends up being some sacks that he runs into. I think that he's been sacked 8 times in the first 2 games this year. I
Mm.
don't think that I tried to look it up, but I think on average he's been sacked. I don't think there's been a season in his career where he hasn't been sacked 40 plus times. He's been sacked a lot in his career, and Seattle's had some crappy O lines. And this week, their O line doesn't seem to be that great this year. And the right tackle, their regular right tackle, Brandon Shell, is out for the game. Something to keep an eye on.
Mm.
In that. But really, we've watched enough football. We know what Wilson does, right? He's tremendous. He's got tremendous vision, tremendous escapability. He can run if he has to, but he doesn't really. He's not a running quarterback anymore, really.
No, he
He,
prefers to wait for one of his receivers to pop
yeah,
open when he's scrambling and hit that. And that's usually when he kills you because those will be 35, 40-yard downfield passes, and he puts them on a dime. And it can be so frustrating. It's been frustrating for the Vikings. However, the Vikings have played him close. I mean, he's 5-0 against Zimmer's teams, but all but one have been, I think, within one score. They're all played relatively close. And did you know this is the first time Russell Wilson will be playing in U.S. Bank Stadium?
I did because the only times he's played in Minnesota was in 2015
Mm-hmm.
slash 2016 when they were at TCF Stadium at the time, and that 2015 regular season game is the one you're talking about that wasn't close. We got
Right.
like boat raced like
Mm-hmm.
38-7 or
35 to
something.
nothing, and
Yeah,
then Cordero Patterson does a Deion Sanders high step into the end zone on a kickoff return, and everybody
yeah.
booed him because
Why
you
would
know
you do that when you're
when
getting
you're that
you're
far
getting
behind. Yes,
yeah, you're getting blown out, and then
and then
and
of
then the
course the
next game, of
playoff game.
course, was the playoff game, the 10-9 loss, the Blair Walsh game,
Yes.
probably the greatest game plan that the Vikings Zimmer's defense has ever had against Wilson. He didn't do they used the weather to their
Uh huh. I'm
advantage in
about to
that
say
one
the
because
weather was on their side.
it was so cold and windy, but that one he really didn't do much. But normally he's a real thorn on our side. In the last 2 games, but the previous 5 games that he's Wilson has played against us, he never threw for more than 30 passes in a game. And in the last 2, he's thrown for over 30. A sign that the offense has become more pass happy in Seattle because they have to, and because Wilson, I think, wants to. Like let Wilson cook. I'm the guy. I'm the man. I'm the guy that makes the plays, and he's the focal point. You know that Wilson is going to get some of his. there's going to be plays where we're going to be having our hands up in the air as Vikings fans and say, God, he's done it to us again. He scrambled around and made a big play. But something that I think that we'll see how the Vikings play him tomorrow, because I don't know if people were watching Eli and Peyton Manning talk doing their broadcast during the Green Bay and Detroit game, but they made an interesting comment about how Detroit was defending Aaron Rodgers, and saying that it looked like that Detroit was they were playing a lot of deep shell, cover two,
Mm-hmm.
testing Rodgers' patience, forcing him to like complete short passes and make long, extensive drives, like 10 plus play drives, and checking his patience and to see if he would force things and maybe make some mistakes. As we saw in the game, Rodgers was very patient. He did not make any mistakes, and he carved up uh, the Lions pretty badly. But Seattle has been very, very good the first two games at explosive plays. I was looking it up, and they've had 8 plays of 20 yards or more in the first two games, and 3 of those 8 plays have been 60 plus yard completions for touchdowns.
Damn.
Um, and and Wilson has, I don't know what his stats were in past years, but I think we know about he's a great deep ball passer.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first two games of this year, he's thrown, I think, taken a large percentage of deep shots. 13 of his 54 passes in the first two games, or 24%, have been deep shots. And he's completed 7 of those. So that's over 50%. And 4 of those have been TDs, including the 3 60-yarders we talked about. So big focus for the Vikings, I think, is they can't give up these big explosive plays that have really been fueling the Seattle offense's success. And if you're wondering how the Vikings defense has been as far as giving up explosive plays, well, I can tell you because I looked that up as well. And they've given up 8 plays in the 2 games so far of 25 yards or more. That is not good. And if they don't correct that tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be very difficult for us to beat the Seahawks and to stop Russell Wilson.
Well, we'll get to the defense, the Vikings defense here momentarily. The next thing you wanted to talk about was the corners on the Seahawks side. You had
DJ Reed and Trey Flowers are their starters.
Yeah, here you got DJ Reed, and here you got Trey Flowers. Yes, those are your starting quarterbacks. How do you think Trey Flowers is doing so far this season?
Just a few more stats. This is from ESPN stats and information, but they had. I'm just reading here from the story. They said in a story earlier this week that among the 54 defensive backs with at least 10 targets as the nearest defender this season, Flowers ranks 50th in passer rating allowed and 41st in completion rate allowed. He's allowing like almost 73% completions that are thrown his way when he's the nearest defender. And DJ Reed has been not fantastic either. 24th when it comes to passing rating allowed, and tied for 28th on the completion rate.
Trey Flowers PFF doesn't like him either.
No, and DVOA, the Football Outsiders, they got the defense ranked. Seattle defense ranked 19th overall, and the passing defense a little bit lower than that. So this is a secondary. There's been talk that Sidney Jones IV, who the Seahawks traded for before the season started, that he might replace Trey Flowers for this game if Flowers continues to play like he has been the first 2 games. And this is a critical matchup for the Vikings because last week we expected Thielen, JJ Jefferson to really maybe not. I think the first week we really expected Thielen and JJ Jefferson to light up Eli Apple and the Bengals secondary, and they really didn't. They had okay games, and AT had 2 touchdown catches, which was nice,
Right.
but we I think partly because of the just the huge amount of offensive penalties we had that short circuited a lot of drives, we didn't get the passing game rolling as much, even though the running game really struggled. Last week, the running game was much better for the Vikings, so we didn't have to pass as much. We were effective in the passing game, particularly in the first half, but again, not huge numbers. Although KJ Osborn did have that big 60
Oh,
60 yard 64-yard beauty on the second play of the game.
I
But
think he's
I think
leading
it's
the team after two
yeah,
weeks.
he
So,
is. Yeah,
and I know he's
receptions
12 for
in,
12 on catches, passes thrown his way. And he's the only
but
one that's that.
yeah, like Thielen and JJ, they've been fine in the 2 games, but they haven't had a breakout big game where they got over 100 yards receiving and 10 plus catches. It's sort of been very evenly spread out. I feel this is a game against Flowers and DJ Reed and Sidney Jones the fourth, who, if he's not starting in place of Flowers yet, how good can he be? Like this is a really a matchup that the Vikings 3 receivers really have to win and exploit in this game, particularly when Dalvin Cook is not going to be 100% and is a
It's
questionable, so
questionable
50
whether he's going to play at all. Yeah.
so like I think that's what 50-50 right now whether he'll play or not play. I think he will play, but it also wouldn't be surprising for me if he does play, if he gets again that he could re-injure the ankle and be out of the game for the whole game, and then you've got Alexander Mattison in there and as your starter. I think
Well,
that's quite possible scenario that's going to happen on Sunday, and you know that the Seahawks defense will be looking to give that old ankle on Cook
oh,
a couple of
yes.
extra tugs.
That's where the training staff has to have an extra dozen rolls of tape so they can and tape that sucker up.
Yeah, but I think just critical, not critical for the Vikings offense to really get that Thielen and JJ
Mhm.
Jefferson really have strong games in this one and really make the Seahawks defense pay,
You wanted
really
to
pay.
see some PFF scores? Here
Yeah.
we go. Let's me move. I got two of those at the same time. You
Ooh, I
got
like
Adam
this.
Thielen, you got Justin Jefferson, and let me bring up
KJ
Ozzy. Boom.
moving
There's
him
Ozzy on the
down.
top. All right. Anytime PFF has you in the green, you're doing good. The darker, the better. And they all of ours are in the green. Part of that is due to our quarterback, obviously, because he is playing well. But our
Definitely. Yeah.
receivers are good versus when we looked at the Seahawks corners, which were all in the orange and brown and closing in on red. Um, Not so good. So we have an advantage there. The question is, will Kirk Cousins have enough time? I'm betting the answer to that is yes.
That'll be that'll be of course you can't throw if you don't have much
Mm-hmm.
like you can't throw if you don't have much time to throw the ball. We know Cousins does not like to be pressured. No quarterback does, but a guy like Russell Wilson can escape that, whereas Kirk Cousins is not usually able to do that, although he did have a hell of a nice throw on the run last
Last
week,
week,
which
mm-hmm.
and that was on the same drive where he ran
Going
for
against his
35
body,
yards.
rolling
Yeah,
out to the
Eddie
left,
rolling out to the
which is
left.
he's extremely good at. He is probably one of the best. And hear me, folks. This is Dave talking up Kirk Cousins. He is one of the best rolling to his left and throwing that direction of any quarterback in the league. He is just that is one of his uh, unheralded skills. The dude can do that, whether it's on play action or just out of necessity. He has nailed that throw down. And for a right handed quarterback, that is one of the most difficult throws you have. And it amazes me that he he is so good at that. We'll get into play actions. Play actions, this is one of the things I wanted to bring up. Play actions, we've run, I think it was like 7 or 9 or 8 or somewhere around that in both our first 2 games, right? And he is so very good at play actions. Well, some of the game has dictated whether we're running play actions or not by down and distance. When you're 2nd and 20, right, a play action isn't generally going to do a whole lot because the defense knows you're going to pass anyways, generally. And, of course, our tendency is hand the ball off to Cook so he can get 5 yards. It gets frustrating. Hopefully we will see more play action because he is so good at that. Hopefully the Seattle defense will bite, even if Cook is out, even if it's just Mattison, right? I suspect that the play action, because it freezes your linebackers, and Seattle has a weak spot there in the middle, it is something that could be taken advantage of and put in Kirk's good performances throwing the ball, right, over the first 2 weeks. It could be a boon for the Vikings. Just my opinion. An old guy, I hope it comes to fruition, but that's how I would attack it if I was Clint Kubiak.
And I think the Seahawks know that. But the one thing watching the Seahawks game against the Titans last week was I watched the condensed game, and their defense doesn't have a whole lot of names that you'd recognize. They got Bobby Wagner still there, and he's still playing at a high level. And there's Jamal Adams, the safety, and that's about like it as far as the name guys. And Wagner had 17 or 18 tackles in that game against the Titans. The Seahawks defense did a really good job on Derrick Henry in the first half, but as often happens with Henry, by the second half, those 2-yard runs started turning into 7-yard runs, and then even longer, and he ended up with well over 160, 170 yards rushing. We don't have a battering ram like that. Mattison is a bit more physical, but I think that one thing I noticed about is that Jamal Adams he's a safety, but he's almost like a linebacker because they send him on a lot of blitzes, run blitzes, and pass rushing. I think last year he set the record for most sacks for a defensive back, I believe. And they send him. He's nosy. He's at the line of scrimmage a lot, and you have to account for him in your blocking. And the Seahawks in general like to fire guys aggressively through gaps. And last week I found in the second half, as you might remember, the Vikings got 23 points offensively in the first half and scored 3 in the second half. And the Cardinals defense adjusted to us. They made it tougher for Cook to run. They had more guys at the line of scrimmage. They started firing more on run blitzes, and that really handy. I didn't find that the Vikings offense adjusted to that, and that resulted in a lot of 3 and 6 and outs, and the 3 points that we got. Should have had 6, but we know what happened to that other field goal, right?
Now, I had a discussion this morning exactly on that it was noticed that in the second half it didn't seem the Vikings adjusted. And as I said, well, in the first half, the offense was cooking just fine. They were up by a couple scores, just keep rolling with that. But where the shortcoming was in the anticipation of the Cardinals adjusting to what we did to the first half and then being ready. So if they made those adjustments, to attack those. That's what came out lacking last week in the second half. It cannot do it here in this game because Pete Carroll's too smart. Pete Carroll's been around as long, if not longer, than Mike Zimmer. I think they're both about this. I think Pete Carroll's a little older.
He is, yeah.
I think
Like
he's
Carroll's
up in
over
70. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Mike is 65. They're smart. They know how to do this. They need to make sure that those halftime adjustments, or at least the anticipation of what the other team's going to do, is prepared for, because they've got to come out with they've got to come out with two good halves and not just one like they have in the first two games.
Yeah, exactly, Dave. And I think that what they did against the Titans and that kind of firing guys and having Adams nosy at the line of scrimmage and Wagner's flying through looking for gaps to shoot through. That's how they play defense. That's how they're going to start to play. They're going to focus on the run, as every team does. And whether it's Cook or Mattison in there, they're going to be looking, number one, to stop that. The Vikings have to be able and should be able to exploit that aggressiveness at the line of scrimmage with, like you say, play action, boots, those sorts of things. And they did not really exploit it. Well, not really. They did not exploit it in the second half against the Cardinals. And I just don't know why. You have to make some adjustments. You got to make teams pay for taking away something that you're doing well by doing something else that you do well. And like, again, where was the play action on that? Where were the boots on that? Where was the misdirection to get guys that were shooting somewhere and you go the other way on them?
Get them to overcommit.
Make them overrun the play. We have to have play calling and execution in that. So to slow that down and make them try to do something else. Then if they back off, then we can, get the run going, because you've got linebackers and safeties deeper. They're almost begging you to run, and then we can get those chunk plays on the running game that we so love. Although last year the running game worked the whole game except on the 4th and 1 play. So we'll see how that goes. But I really feel that the Vikings have to counteract that Seahawk defense aggressiveness. It's not a great defense.
No,
it's the
by
defense
far,
is
no,
quite.
It's not.
The defense is giving up a few less points per game than the Vikings defense is, but also their offense is been a little bit better than the Vikings,
producing more points.
Producing more and taking a bit more pressure off them, I think.
And
very interesting.
I've always said, the key to winning is scoring more points than your opponent.
It's funny how that works, Dave. Funny how that works, yeah.
Shout out to our buddies Drew and Ted. With their great show, they're doing fantastic.
Drew's predicting a Vikings victory tomorrow.
I know he is, and that's sort of shocking to me. We'll see.
I get where he's coming from on it, though, because
I do too. And it could very well happen.
Yeah, very well.
It should happen. Now we get to your next point, which is one of our weak points. Bada boom. Right there. Ooh. Bashaud Breeland.
Woo.
Look at those scores, baby. Ooh. Can you tell me why he's still starting?
Terrible.
They're in the red. They're horrible against the run, and that's the best score. Yeah. That's not a starting corner, period. Now.
No.
We'll keep these in mind. Putrid red for Bashaud Breeland. Then we have Patrick Peterson. Well, what are his scores? And I know I did him, and I don't see him. Oh, shoot.
Technical difficulties.
Well, they're there. They're somewhere. Where in the heck did they go? Oh, well. But I know I did his scores as well.
This is the downside of the live show.
Downside of the live show, and I can't find what I did earlier. I spent all morning prepping on this. I can flip back over here to good old PFF.
You sure that's just your first beer, Dave?
Yeah, it's only 3/4 the way done. It's not even close. Patrick Peterson, as I read it off the screen, which makes me look this way, um, he had a 53 overall in his defense, 53.6, 53.1 on coverage, and a 54.7 on run defense. Not good. Not good at all. Now,
Not
where
not in the green. Not in the
no,
green.
not in the green. Those are in the orange and the brown. That's not not good. As Mary says, this is unacceptable. Um,
Brown, same color as the turds that you and I will pump
uh,
out
yep.
after a
And
good
we'll get
meal.
into that next week when we play the Brownies. But it is not good whatsoever. And I know I did Mac's
Mac and
scores
cheese. Mac
too.
and cheese rankings aren't too hot either.
I did his scores too. I know I did it. Now where I can not finding them set up here. All right. Why they dropped off, I don't know. Interesting. I wonder if there's a bug. Mac and cheese, Mackenzie Alexander, he's in the orange. 42.0 against overall. 28.7, which is in the red against the run. And he's better in pass coverage at a 51, which is bordering orangish yellow. That has been an unexpected weak point for this defense. Now, PFF, when it comes to PFF scores on those guys, I agree. They don't know the coverage. They're guessing, and they've gotten it wrong. You can listen to Patrick Peterson on his show rail about it, on how they're grading them wrong. And even if that's the case, that would have made Mackenzie Alexander miss that long touchdown pass versus him. But they may be playing. But you can see in these first two games, there's a lack of the gelling on the defensive side in that secondary that we are accustomed to all the way up until last year, right? Everybody communicated so well. You know, it was little hand signals, a little look here and a little look there, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and our defenses were so good. I don't see that communication yet. I don't see that level of communication yet. That's a better way to put it. They're trying to communicate, obviously, but I don't see that level yet. And that is when you take that as a defensive secondary versus Russell Wilson, is a possibility for disaster. The only thing that benefits us is that the Seahawks offensive line isn't as good as it could be, thankfully. They're rolling on their, umpteenth year since about 5 years ago, since having a decent offensive line. And they'll be susceptible to heavy pressure and the rush. What do you think about how our defensive secondary matches up against Lockett and DK Metcalf?
It doesn't match up against them at all. The like Lockett has come out of the gates in the first two gates with just a shot out. Like his catches aren't huge. He's got 12 receptions, which is middle of the pack in the NFL, but 278 yards on those catches, 23.2 yard per catch average. That's very good, by the way. And so his yardage is second in the league.
Anything over
yeah,
what for a receiver over about 7 is good. You want to get over 10 would be real good.
Yeah, and he's got 3 TDs in 2 games. That's second and tied for second in the league with a few people, including our own Adam Thielen. But he's been making big plays in both games. Some of those, 2 of those 60-yarders I mentioned, the explosive plays that the Seahawks had got in previous, he's been on the end of those. And DK Metcalf hasn't really broken out yet. He's got 10 catches for just over 100 yards with 1 TD, but he is a humongous human being. A guy who probably could have been a gold Olympic sprinter if he had chosen sprinting. Like 6'4", he's about 230, built like a brick shithouse. Um,
He
those
could
two
put on a few
guys,
pounds and become a tight end.
yeah,
Mhm.
those two guys are going to be major problems for our secondary as it's currently constructed. I would a huge challenge for them, especially because when Wilson starts dancing around, buying time, our guys, you said communication hasn't been that great. Last week we saw when Kyler Murray was scrambling around and led to coverage breakdowns,
Mhm.
big plays, guys being uncovered, covered by nobody, and Russell Wilson it presents you the same problems, same challenges that
Just a
Kyler
little
Murray does.
wiser on
Yeah,
what he's going to
little
do.
older,
Hmm.
may not throw up a couple of bad interceptions like Kyler Murray did last week, which but that is the challenge. The longer you have to cover, you're not going to be able to cover Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf for 6-7 seconds, like some of these plays go when Wilson's
Hmm.
dancing around there. And Metcalf, if you know if he'll out physical you, he'll basically bully you around,
Yeah, he'll
even
box
if
you out.
even if you have good coverage. The but So that's a huge challenge. One thing I would like to see is Cameron Dantzler at least split the snaps with Bashaud Breeland. Dantzler played pretty well in the short time that he was in the game last week. Made a nice pass breakup, didn't give up any completions.
Would you
Bashaud
like to know
Breeland,
his PFF scores?
I would, Dave.
All right. This
I
is
would.
I don't have them prepped, but I have them right here next to me. You got to remember everybody else is in the orange, right?
Yep.
Going down to the red for Breland.
I know it's a
Dantzler, small sample
small
size.
sample
Yes,
size.
it's still small sample size. So you got to keep that. It's small sample size. PFF has Dantzler overall 70.5, well into the green. His rush
Hey,
defense at 60, even, and his pass defense at 70.7. Who
but
should be
hey,
starting?
Zimmer benched him the game before, right? And only played him because Harrison Hand
Hey,
was hurt and couldn't suit up.
well, and Harrison Hand won't be here this weekend,
No, he won't. Or else maybe Zimmer would sit him again.
but he should be starting. If Breland even hiccups wrong on Sunday, he should be yanked and Dantzler should be in. I think
The
Dantzler should start, but hey, I understand he's going to start Breland just because. But like I said, if he even hiccups, misses one tackle, misses one coverage, boom, bench, Dantzler, you're in. Make it happen. That's
You might not
the
even have to
smart
wait that
coaching move.
long because Breland keeps on getting nicked up like Xavier Rhodes on every other play.
Well,
I don't.
supposedly his back is okay. He's a go. I didn't make a slide for who's out, but it's Barr again, tendonitis in his knees. Question
There's
is, will we ever see him play again? What a waste of money that's been.
Yep,
Um,
big waste of money. I
um,
wouldn't want Bart in there right now anyway because he'd be taking snaps from Nick Vigil, and Vigil's playing great.
Vigil's playing great. I'm curious though how Barr communicates well. That I'll give him. All those outstanding defenses Mike's had, Barr's been the lead communicator on those. Um, and there is something to that. And he does cause problems for offenses because they're not sure what he's going to do. I don't understand why that's the case because if you study it, you can figure out what he's doing. Darisaw is out. They're not going to play him yet. He's not quite ready. Harrison Hand's out. He popped up with COVID. It was whatever it was in the proximity of somebody that tested positive. Then he
Close,
came back
close,
and he's
close contact.
close contact, and then he came back and it's a hamstring or something. I don't remember what the report said, but it's an injury wise, hands out. And I think that's it of the major players that's out, and other
Yeah,
than
Cook.
Cook being questionable.
Yeah, that the The cornerback situation, not very. I'm not very enthusiastic about this matchup. Even Freddie Swain, the third wide receiver for
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, has made a big catch last week. Of course, he wasn't covered by the Titans either. He was wide open, busted coverage, but he's a useful wide receiver. Really, that I feel that if the Vikings just keep on giving up explosive plays like they've been giving up, uh, and Seattle's been very good at creating explosive plays, like it's just not a very good matchup for us. If you get one or two of the three cornerbacks that were playing a lot, if they step up their play, i.e. Mac Alexander starts playing like we know he can
Mm-hmm.
in the slot, and Dantzler is in there instead of Breeland and playing like he did last week, and maybe Peterson doesn't stand out as much. I'm it's not a shocking thing to say that I'm a little bit disappointed with how the three starting corners have performed so far. You and I were you a bit more on
Mm-hmm.
Peterson than I was, but I think we all were quite happy with the Vikings signing Peterson. We kind
Mm-hmm.
of felt
I
he'd
still
be like
think
a
he could be a very good corner.
Terrence. He'd provide the leadership
Mm-hmm.
and Terrence Newman kind of veteran presence for a younger secondary,
Make smart
getting Matt
plays, get
make
beat
smart
on
plays,
rare occasions, but yes. Mm-hmm.
and he could be another coach on the field. Like that communication with his experience, you'd expect that he would be the guy that'd be providing that in the secondary. If that is not happening, Mac Alexander, solid guy, nice guy to have, and then Breeland's always been solid where he's
Mm-hmm.
been, and he added depth that we had, but it just hasn't worked out so far.
Right, and I think our safeties are fine. Obviously, Hitman, his play seems a little down for some reason, but as Xavier Woods is doing, I think, a bang up job. I like how he's played so far. And it may all be the communication and the gelling thing. I literally think it's that. I think as they get yards under their feet, all that will come together. Now, being at US Bank, feeding off that crowd vibe because it's going to be rocking tomorrow.
For
Absolutely rocking.
for
Uh,
how long though?
well, hopefully all day. I don't know if you've seen, but the Vikes have put out a little brief teaser on their hype video they plan on playing before the game. And it's all the old guys talking about how at the old Met, when the cold wind blew, they
I did see
started
that.
chanting Odin,
Hmm.
Odin, Odin. And I sort of semi expect that to be adopted by the fans tomorrow as part of our, along with the SKOL chant, to intimidate anybody that comes into that building. At least that's how I
You
would.
and you and you home field advantage is only home field advantage if the home team is playing well and keeping the crowd into it and juiced up. If the Vikings come out flat,
Mhm.
like they tend to do, that crowd's going to get quiet, and the Seahawks have success early on, preventing our offense from getting anything done, and their offense is scoring on our defense. That crowd's going to get very quiet, and when it isn't quiet, it's going to be booing, and it won't be a home field advantage. So really got to, yeah, the home field advantage is nice, but the home team has got to create that excitement too.
Mhm.
And I'm not totally confident that our home team will be able to do that. Mind you, the last two games on the road, the Vikings have played great first halves, only to blow it in the second half, and both times in Seattle. So I don't know, what kind of Vikings team is going to show up on tomorrow morning against this Seahawks team.
Well,
Um,
for a lot of the players, whether it be the 1 year wonders this year or the rookies from last year, this will be the first time they get to play in front of a full US Bank Stadium with all the bells and whistles. So it should be interesting. One last
it will
bit.
be.
I pulled this chart from Sharp Football. They're doing an analysis on, yes, Raymond, I think it's going to be tough on Wilson. And his
Always is.
offensive line. That's where I think it's going to get most. I think you're going to get a lot of false starts. But I pulled this chart from Sharp Football. He's showing the spread at 2. It's now down to, I think, 1.5 or 1. Money is going towards the Vikings on this. The big question is, Dalvin Cook, will he play or not? Mike Zimmer is notorious for covering the spread like no other head coach. So if we're at 1.5, hopefully we don't lose by 1 point, which I think I called earlier in the week just because I'm 0-2 on the season and I'd rather be 0-3 and win than get it right. As you can see, the implied totals averages, Seattle scores 2 more points than we do on average per game. Now, it's only 2 games, so it's a small size.
Yeah.
Points per game, a little bit more than 2 points. 2.5 points games allowed. We've allowed more because of said defense that we've discussed quite intensely today. Now, look at the plays per game. I thought this was an odd stat. We average 65.5 plays per game. That's about normal. 60 to 70 plays per game is normal, right? That's not a big deal. Seahawks are only averaging 52.5 plays per game. That, to me, is an odd number. It means not a lot of drives.
Well, that's, I think, a function of the explosive plays that they've had, Dave, and that they haven't
possibly
had quite a few drives that have they haven't had to grind it out.
They're taking longer yards, chunk yards.
Wilson's chucking it up, and it's going for a 68-yard TD to Tyler Lockett, or 60 or 50-some-yard TD to Tyler Lockett, or a 63-yard TD or whatever it was to Freddie Swain. They've had some big chunk plays, like big chunk plays, and I think that's. And so you've got like a 3 or 4 play drive instead of a 8 or 9 play drive.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense with their opponents' plays. They average 77, ours average 64. Yards per play for the offense, they're at 7.4, which tends to be the bigger plays, whereas it's 6.1, which is low for us. That's a running average, a very good running average, but defense, they're holding up at 5.6, which is middle of the pack. We're at 6.6, which is bottom quartile. And then we get into pass rush percentages. Look at that number for the Vikings. Does that surprise you?
The 63?
Yep, 63.7% of all our plays have been passes. Now, good chunk of that's because we've been behind. We're playing catch up. But that is way higher than Viking normal.
Yeah, that's again, that's the 2-game averages, right? But we threw the ball 50 times against the Bengals, and I think that's where that's coming from. Yeah. Yet last week was much more balanced, much more kind of the Kubiak type offense where we're running it and passing it about the same amount of time. And the running game was pretty crappy against the Bengals. It was on fire, at least in the first half, against the Cardinals, and I think again that's where your 2-game you're creating a bit of anomalies there. I think after 8 or 9 games we'd see these stats would be a little bit different in some of these categories.
Yep, could be. I hope so, and we'll find out. Now, since we've gone through all that, how do you think the game's going to go tomorrow? Who do you think's going to pull this one out?
Mr. Optimistic here. I'm seeing the Seahawks winning this one like they've won every other one. Probably going to be a close game, but somehow we'll find a way to blow it at the end. And I don't. What's the Owen? But this is a must. This is the must.
We're at a must win. The coaching staff, Mike Zimmer in particular, I also think Spielman, but I also think Spielman has the Wilfs hosed, baffled with his genius. Um, Mike Zimmer's back's against the wall. He's got to knock out. Basically, if he knocks out the next two, he's fine. Next three, he's doing great. The homestand. He's got to win. He can't lose anymore. He did this to himself. He's the head coach. He could have done things a little bit differently, made some smarter choices, made some better decisions, game time decisions, unlike last week. But he's got to win this game. I think the Vikings can. I think skilled players,
yes,
by far, they can. They can match up very easily against the Seahawks. And they can beat these guys. It's whether they all bring it together. I think it's going to be fun for the fans, unless they just absolutely lay a turd. I think it's going to be a blast for the fans. I think the team's going to appreciate the fans because I'm looking forward to the show that will be put on in U.S. Bank Stadium from the pregame. However, I don't think that'll be on because of Sunday Ticket. The guys watching locally will catch that. That should be awesome. To halftime, to all the festivities because it's the grand reopening since we've been gone so long. And yes, Raymond, Zim seat's on fire. And the only way he's going to put it out is to start winning consecutively.
Get some W's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Make those first two games look like, they were only one play away stuff. And as I wrote in the prequel to this show, they wouldn't be one play away if you're winning a bunch of other plays.
Yep.
Technically, they were one play away, whether it be the fumble or the missed kick. But win all those other plays or the majority of those other plays, and you don't have to worry about those one plays. Be aggressive on offense. Score 50.
Said it before, Dave, and we'll say it again. But when there's no great skill in winning close games, you leave it down to a one-score game. It's a coin flip. Who's going to win it? Some years you're going to win a few more of those than maybe you should. Some years you're going to lose a few more of those than maybe you should. And the last season and so far this season, we've been losing a few more of those that we should. Mm-hmm. Like you say, be more successful on more plays in the game. You don't leave the game to be close. You win comfortably, like by 10 points or a little bit more, and you don't have to sweat it out at the end. This team has not been good enough, though, to do that. And I have not seen anything in the first two games that indicates to me that tomorrow is going to be any different than it's been for the past previous now going on 18 games.
I think if the gelling and communication, that switch goes on, there's been plenty of individual stuff that shows that they could be very, very good.
Sure.
If that comes together, I think they will. Now, the question is, will it or not? In time or not?
What did we talk about last week, Dave? What the Vikings had to do to win? What they needed to not self-destruct with the penalties. They got that done. They only had 3 penalties last week. They had to start out fast, not have a slothful start. So you get a touchdown on the offensive play of your game. You get a 3-and-out with your defense, their first possession. We needed the running game to get going. The running game was going. We needed the offensive line to
play well,
adequately, play well, protect Cousins, and open up holes for the running game. They did that.
They did extremely well.
We still didn't win the game. All of those things we did, we still didn't win the game. So I'm at a loss for what the Vikings need to do now, other than kick ass in every possible area of football.
Well, what was the one shortcoming on that? It was on the defensive side. The strength of our head coach. And
but
they got to communicate. I mean, the offensive play calling in the second half got stale. They puckered up and went conservative when they should have gone aggressive. They didn't anticipate changes that Cardinals would make. All that's got to change. Let's do it this week. Come out hot and then anticipate the changes.
Stay hot.
And plan for them in the second half and stay hot on both sides of the ball. You do that, we're going to be cheering tomorrow night on the final score. Climb in the Pockets, the final score, where we go live at the final whistle, probably right before. You'll see us watch the end just as you will if you're not in the stadium. And by the way, tomorrow we've got two guys that are going to be in the stadium watching the game.
Ooh.
The great Flip Muzzy will be there. Eric Thompson will be there of Daily Norseman. We have Ryan Ortega will be there. And there's a few others from the group that will be in the stadium. Hopefully they'll give us some live reports. Flip's going to try to join us because he's a member of the Final Score regulars. And we're going to talk hopefully about a Vikings win. Until then, it's Saturday. It's rolling into the evening. Hope you got the barbecue toasting up. You got something ready to put on there, maybe a big brisket. I'm in Texas. I'm looking forward to some brisket. I got to find me a grill.
Brisket house.
Well, they got tons of them around here, but I need to find myself a smoker, and it's got to be electric because I can't have gas or charcoal in the apartment to start doing some of that. But yes, they've got some good stuff over here. Any last words, Darren?
I did have something, and you were talking away, and I lost it, but which is okay. But I really, I'm not optimistic about the Vikings' shot tomorrow. Not because they're not capable of beating the Seahawks, not because they don't have matchups that I think that they can exploit, not because they think that the Seahawks are such a better team than the Vikings, but I just feel that this team is somehow got bad mojo going on, and we are now 5 games, if you count the 3 that didn't count, and 2 in the regular season, 5 games, and we're 0-5 in all of them, and blah, 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 all of that didn't matter, but we are looking like I've said it in other forums, and it's like we are developing a losing culture with the Minnesota Vikings right now under this regime, and we are starting to turn into the Detroit Lions. We just have different colored uniforms.
We're not that bad, but we do need some exorcism on those bad thoughts. A friend of ours, Vanessa King, if she could do a little bit of her magic, get rid of some of that, and we'll be golden.
This is a big game, not just for the Vikings, but also for the Seahawks. Though they blew that game against the Titans last week. They're 1-1. Everybody else in the NFC West is 2-0. They can't lose more ground, or their chances of making the playoffs will be in jeopardy. So they're going to be as pumped up for this game as the Vikings are. The Vikings have to be ready to take the best shots that the Seahawks have to give them, and hopefully. Tomorrow we are all happy to see the Vikings' first win of the 2021 season.
And we'll see
SKOL, baby.
The first chant of Odin. Since the 70s.
That intro really gave me goosebumps, actually, when I watched that. Really well done.
That was awesome. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Remember, we'll catch you tomorrow live at the final whistle. Just join us here. We will be going cross-platform again on that one. And be safe, be healthy, and SKOL Vikings!
You know what Arian says? No risk it, no brisket, baby. Or I think it's biscuit. But anyway.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. SKOL, everybody.